Yeah. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the War Room. This one is for the UFC 262 co-main event. Tony Ferguson against Beneil Dariush. Okay, it's unfortunate that this one's only over 3 rounds because I think this may well go 3 rounds. I want to start off by saying that. Both of these guys are very skilled fighters. They have some similar skill sets. There's a little bit of chaos in both their games. There's a bit more chaos in Tony Ferguson's game. Sometimes he pays for that. There's a bit of chaos in Beneil Dariush's game, but a lot of the time he applies it quite well in situations where he's already backed up, or where there's the correct opportunity to use a bit of chaos to his advantage. Dariush is an excellent grappler. He's got medals at the Worlds. He's got his black belt in 5 years. Very, very impressive, and it shows in his jiu-jitsu game in mixed martial arts. A lot of the time, he'll find himself in a situation, the Drew Dober fight comes to mind, where he's not got the ideal circumstance, but he kind of figures it out and makes it work. That fundamental understanding of submissions, that mechanical understanding, as opposed to, just the technical understanding, which can be limited. Tony Ferguson on the other side, a very good grappler, but a different kind of grappler. On one side, you've got Beneil Dariush, who's very, very good jiu-jitsu. I think he's the lineage of Vinny Magalhaes, his coach, and then Dariush. I think that's correct. So good jiu-jitsu basics, good fundamentals, went through the grading system, competed at different belt levels, and has tested his basics. Gi jiu-jitsu, it teaches you good basics, it teaches you good posture, good framing. There are lots of benefits, and going back to the the foundations of the grappling arts. Tony Ferguson comes at things from a different angle. He's a good wrestler. He's got a strong wrestling background, and he's also he's complemented that with Brazilian jiu-jitsu from the 10th Planet system, which it's a different approach. I think 10th Planet has got lots of good finishing mechanisms. I think there's a lot of things in 10th Planet that are very suitable for mixed martial arts. Holding people in positions when you're on your back, getting mission control or lockdown, different positions where you can control from the bottom. Mission control with elbows, is still something that Eddie Bravo would talk about today. It would be a strong position in mixed martial arts, and I don't think it's utilized nearly as well as it should be. But as far as the attacking side of 10th Planet, there are a lot of attacks from the back, but Tony Ferguson tends to focus on Darce chokes. That seems to be the thing that suits his game the most, partly because similar to the Diaz method, he's quite overwhelming in his striking approach. He's like a tornado of elbows at sometimes, spinning and cutting and slicing people, and hurting people, rocking them, forcing people to shoot. People that wouldn't normally level change, guys like Edson Barbosa. People level changing into his submission game. So excellent Darce chokes, excellent neck attacks. I think 3 Darce chokes, 3 rear naked chokes on his record. But 12 knockouts. He does most of his damage on the feet, and he's not a one-punch knockout killer. He's an accumulative damager. He oftentimes, he's covered with blood and it's not his own. Sometimes it's his own. That's part of the reason why we love him, though, and that's part of the chaos. There's an unpredictability to his style which often catches people off guard, and I think that is a strength coming into this fight against Beneil Dariush. He can't be completely chaotic. He needs to have some kind of focus and direction. Some techniques in mind that are going to be effective against Dariush, and elbows is going to be a big part of that game. He does so much damage with elbows, and elbows last, especially if you land in the first round. They can be very influential on the judges' scorecards and on the doctors, and negatively on the confidence of your opponent as well. So I think for Tony, using his wrestling in this fight to keep it on the feet and avoid the grappling game of Dariush is smart. We saw a few holes in Tony's game against Charles Oliveira, and I think the reasons for those holes are because Tony doesn't have that same kind of foundation of Brazilian jiu-jitsu like you would see in a Charles Oliveira or a Beneil Dariush. He's got the wrestling with the complementary submission finishes of 10th Planet. So, some of the positions that he was caught in against Charles Oliveira, and, Oliveira would be able to hold those positions on most people. He's an excellent grappler. Um, but there was a lack of basics from Tony Ferguson, and I think that's somewhere he could struggle and he could suffer against Dariush, who's definitely going to have a very similar strong top game to Oliveira. Dariush might feel like his best opportunity to keep himself safe in this fight and get past Tony Ferguson, because you've got to bear in mind that's his mentality. Get past Tony Ferguson. Tony's the one that's got to get back in the win column. He's on a 2-fight losing streak, whereas Dariush is on a 6-fight winning streak. If Dariush gets a win over Tony Ferguson, I mean, it's literally the only way is up. I forgot to pull up the UFC rankings. I will do that right now. But with that in mind, Dariush is not the one in the situation where he has to take a massive amount of risk. Something that stuck out in my mind that he mentioned in the Countdown show was that whatever Tony Ferguson does, he needs to do more. He needs to have a higher volume of striking, which is very difficult to do against Tony Ferguson. If we look at the stats, strikes landed per minute, average strikes landed per minute, Tony Ferguson is 5.46, whereas Dariush is 4.0. There is a definite edge for Tony Ferguson. He's also used to fighting over longer periods of time. He did 5 rounds against RDA in Mexico City. We remember what Sea Level Kane looked like in Mexico City. It takes it out of you. You're fighting at altitude. And Tony looked great. So you've got to think this is a 3-round fight. Tony Ferguson can be foot on the gas 4th to 5th gear all the way through this one. And Dariush is not the fastest of starters. He does kind of take it steady. He does kind of walk his way into the fight and, play the technical game. He's a very cerebral individual. You can see him analyzing his opponent as he's breaking them down. I think Tony Ferguson's going to come and really try and push the pace in this one and try and prove a point, hold his position in the division. Here we go. My rankings are up. So Tony Ferguson's at 5th. Dariush is at 9. And this is the furthest Tony Ferguson's been from the belt in a long time. He was on a 12-fight win streak before those 2 losses, and he was rolling through good guys as well. It's not like he was just eating up weak competition. You look at that recent win streak that he's had before the losses: Cowboy, Pettis, Kevin Lee, and he's stopping all of these guys. RDA, a unanimous decision in Mexico City. I mean, it's not a stoppage, but the fact that he went 5 rounds in Mexico City against RDA is impressive for me. And then that Lando Venata fight, a good example of chaos. He could have quite easily thrown that fight away. That was actually supposed to be a different opponent. I think he was supposed to be fighting. Yes, he was supposed to be fighting Michael Chiesa that night, and it was switched, and he fought Lando Venata on short notice. And it was a mad fight, and he took too many risks in that one. And if he takes those risks against Beneil Dariush, he will pay for it. Dariush has got good power in his hands. He does hit hard, especially when he's hurt, especially when he's backed up and under pressure. But I see many more opportunities. And the thing is, I know like Tony Ferguson, so he's 26-5 with 12 KOs and 8 submissions. So he's stopped 20 of his 26 wins. Dariush on the other end is 5 knockouts and 8 submissions. So equally a decent finishing rate, but less knockouts. In recent fights, though, he's starting to find his range and his rhythm with his striking. Maybe he's just turned a corner with his whole MMA game. Maybe he's got more confidence in his striking in his last 6 fights. I don't know, but that Drakkar close fight was just so much fun to watch. While it lasted, and the back and forth and the left hand that he landed on close was quite spectacular and completely changed the momentum of the fight. And a bit of chaos, which is perfect for someone like Tony Ferguson, spinning back fist against Holtzman as well. But then you look back into early on in his career, he does well against tall guys. James Vick is a very long range fighter. Amazing that he was ever able to make lightweight, but couldn't deal with that swarming pressure of Dariush, who kept separating and throwing power over the top. You've got to think, if Tony Ferguson does get cut or he does get backed up, or he decides he wants to grapple with Dariush and he gets tired, he might be on the end of one of those power punches. and it's much more of a one shot, and then you're in serious trouble with Dariush than it is for Tony Ferguson. Ferguson will hurt you and grapple with you because you've shot on him. Dariush will hurt you and knock you down, and then jump on you and strangle you or whatever else. I mean, what we've got in his record. So 5 rear naked chokes. I mean, a quarter of his wins are by rear naked choke. Arm bars, armbar triangle, and triangle, arm triangle. A variety of different attacks. And also, a high pace as well. He got 5 of 15 takedowns against Ferreira. And we know how much he scrambles. That's why, he had to shoot 15 times, but he's still got a third of his takedowns. I don't think it's a good idea for him necessarily to grapple with Tony Ferguson. I think the idea is to crack him with a big heavy shot and not get caught with the flurry that's coming at him from Tony. And I think he could probably hurt Tony, catch Tony, hurt him, stun him, force Tony to level change, and then Dariush is into his grappling game. And I do think that he might be able to, to be able to overwhelm Tony on the floor, maybe just technically, just with good basics. Tony's got to keep the pressure. He's got to be damaging, and he's got to be a bit chaotic, but measured at the same time with it. Striking at distance like he did with Kakuno or like he did with RDA, and utilize that reach advantage that he's got. What is it? 4 inches. He's got a 4-inch reach advantage. Utilize his advantages in this fight. Cover distance fast. Strike from range, and make himself a mess of sharp edges to deal with for Dariush. I think that's the smartest thing for Tony Ferguson to do. I think it's a very fun fight, and it's a shame it's co-main event because I would have liked this one over 5 rounds. I think this one could be a real mess and a lot of fun, and it could steal the show. I've got a couple of tweets. Let me get through. Jamie, you didn't remind me. See, I almost missed them. Okay, a couple of tweets. How would training with Freddie Roach affect Tony's game? Well, first of all, I don't know how much time he's getting with Freddie Roach. Mr. T's head's in the way a little bit. I don't know how much time he's getting with Freddie Roach. I know that he's been training at Wildcard, but Freddie Roach is a very busy man, and he's got a lot of boxes. He's got a gym to run. I don't know how much one-on-one time Tony's getting. So that's the first thing I do need to say. So maybe not a great deal. It may have been more of a photo opportunity than anything. On the flip side, if he is working with Freddie regularly and he is making improvements, then I would say that those improvements are going to be largely around managing his distance and taking his feet with him when he's stepping. I used to live around the corner from Wildcard and was fortunate enough to train with Freddie a few times, and he's very much basics down the line. Keep yourself at distance, throw your punches correctly. He's a stickler for basics. And I think, that's really what Tony Ferguson needs at this stage in his game. He needs someone to kind of pull him back, reroute his foundations, and give him a nice, strong, long-ranged game. I mean, he's got a reach advantage on most of these guys. That's a welterweight reach and height, 5'11", 76 inches. He just needs to know how to use it. And then the other thing in this one, this is Southpaw v Orthodox. Getting Freddie's thoughts on that would be really useful, as well as Eddie Bravo. It'd be very useful in this one because he's going to need his jiu-jitsu. Anyway, okay, next one was from the great Nicolas Cage. Or Nelg, as he's known by his friends. Nelg, is that it? I don't know how you remember all these numbers. Anyway, if Ferguson wins, how many more wins do you feel he needs before a title shot, considering he was on a huge win streak before his 2-fight skid? It's an excellent point. So his 2-fight skid, he lost to Gaethje in the 5th round. It's the only time he's been stopped, and he was still on his feet at the end of that fight. And then he got 3 rounds he lost to Charles Oliveira. You've got to think if Tony Ferguson wins this next fight against Beneil Dariush and Oliveira wins the belt, that's going to make Tony look like one of the top 2 or 3 contenders because, he fought Oliveira over 3 rounds. He didn't look himself. He had, what does he say, 9 hours of jiu-jitsu for that one? He didn't prepare properly for that fight. And I think, that there could be an argument made there to get him back into a title shot. There's nothing to be gained in this fight for beating Dariush aside from holding the place that he's in. Everything above him is about to change. We've got Chandler against Oliveira in the main event, and they could potentially, really mess up these rankings. They're 3 and 4 at the moment, so you got to think one of those is going to move up to the top of the division. Then we've got Poirier against McGregor as well. McGregor might jump in and find his way back into the top, but Tony Ferguson holding ground keeps himself in that top 5 bracket, and you're never far away from a title shot there, especially if you're as exciting and as chaotic as Tony Ferguson. So I don't think he's that far away, and people's memories are short. A spectacular win over Dariush, and then maybe one more win. Maybe he gets a rematch against Gaethje and gets a finish. He's back in the picture there. And who wouldn't want Tony Ferguson to fight for the belt one more time? Get himself an updated one so he's not carrying that old one around with him all the time. Okay, if Tony Ferguson loses, where does he go next? Could he move to welterweight? Could that be the answer to the revival for Tony? Quite possibly. We've seen quite a few guys move up a weight class and look much better. I mean, I'm just looking at the welterweight rankings now. Gilbert Burns is a good example. Masvidal's a good example. Chiesa is a good example. That's 3 guys in the top 10 right there that are former lightweights that have moved up and look great. Cowboy, I would say, probably looked better at welterweight than he did at lightweight. And then you can look at other divisions as well. Darren Till moving up, Kelvin Gastelum moving up. We're spoiled for choice. I think there are a lot of fighters, especially as they mature. Tony Ferguson's probably wrestled at 155. He was probably 155 at prom when he probably can still wear the same suit. He probably does wear the same suit. Like, you've got to think, like, he might have been forcing his body down for so many years. He's 37 now. It might be time to let his body breathe a bit and go up a weight class and just kind of roll the dice. The danger in that, obviously, is moving up a weight class and getting matched with one of the sharks in the top 15, like, straight away. And this is where we need that little bracket where the veterans get to fight one another. I mean, who wouldn't want to see Tony Ferguson against Carlos Condit or Matt Brown or Cowboy again? There's options there. And I think maybe a change in weight might be a good idea for him. I think that's the last question. Yes, it is. But, either way, Tony's one of those guys. It doesn't matter where he fights, what weight class, who the opponent is. You're going to want to watch because it's Tony and he's a lot of fun. And this fight against Dariush is going to be just that. It's going to be electric while it lasts. And it wouldn't surprise me if it lasted 15 minutes. But it'll be a bloody mess if it does. And we'll all enjoy that. So enjoy the fights, and I'll see you next time.